Call to order and the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, South Brunswick. We were very saddened to learn of the passing of one of our own SRO officer, Lenny Hibbets. Many of you knew him from seeing him at dismissal outside our buildings, most recently at Crossroads South. We offer our sincerest condolences to Officer Hibbets' family and friends, along with his SBPD family and those that worked with him at South Brunswick School District. Please, can we have a moment of silence for Officer Hibbets? Thank you. The New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this Act, the Board Secretary has caused notice of this meeting, including date, time, and location, to be posted in the South Brunswick Public Library and the Board Office, filed with the Township Clerk, and communicated the Home News Tribune and the Star Ledger. Mr. Plowski, can we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Deepa Karthik? Yes. Mr. Rasha Krishna?
Present.
Mr. Ray Keener?
Here.
Mrs. Joyce Mehta?
Here.
Mr. Mike Mitchell?
Present.
Dr. Smitha Raj?
Here.
Mrs. Lisa Rogers?
Here.
Mr. Joseph Scoletti? Here. Mr. Barry Nathanson?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Can we please have a motion to accept tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. A second? Thank you, Dr. Raj. Any discussion? No? Seeing none? Any opposed? Seeing none. Any abstentions? Seeing none? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. Can we please have a motion for the approval of the minutes, the board minutes of January 20th, 2022? Thank you, Mrs. Rogers. A second? Roger. Thank you, Mr. Krishna. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, motion carries. And one more motion, please, for the executive minutes of January 20th, 2022. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. A second. Thank you, Mrs. Rogers. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, motion carries. Moving on to our agenda, can we please have the report of the student representative, Victoria Gutt. Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope everyone is doing well. Let's get started with activities. The Viking Leadership Alliance is hosting a food drive March 7th to the 18th to support the Middlesex County Food Pantry. Shout out to our Robotics 750 SB crew. All 6 robotics teams headed to 2022 VEX NJ States. Championships on March 5th at the Bellworks Home Dough. Robotics Team 750W NC qualified and headed to the U.S. Open Robotics Nationals in Iowa, April 7th, 2022. Our mock trial team made it to the county finals for the first time in our program's history. We are so proud of this accomplishment. Congratulations. Moving on to athletics, our boys bowling. NJSIAA Group 4 sectionals, second place. Group 4 state champions, and the Tournament of Champions, first place, the New Jersey State Champions. Girls winter track and field, the team won the GMC Realize Championship for the 7th consecutive season, scoring 58 points, placing top 4 in every event. Melanie LaCour and Janelle Poku combined in a win of high jump relay. Zanae and Denise won the shot put relay. For wrestling, third place team finished at District 18, Jackson Ratcliffe, District Champ at 138 pounds. Nicholas Wozbeski, District Champ at 215 pounds. Garvesden District, second place at 113. Zanchef Asif District, second place at 144. Adam Durbla at second place at a heavyweight, and all above wrestlers qualified for the region tournament. Girls basketball, the South Brunswick girls basketball team qualified for the semifinal round at the GMC tournament, Tuesday evening against Colonia, 57-49. Congratulations. Alexis Lee Springer collected 18 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 assists for the Vikings, who outscored the Colonia 22-3, 22-17 in the fourth quarter. Katie Resch had 13 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 blocked shots. Meher Fig finished with 12 points and 2 assists in the victory, and Carla Zeff for a total of 10 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 steals. Leigh Pinder led South Brunswick in both rebounds, 10 and assists 6. They will play top-seeded St. Thomas Aquinas in the championship at 6 p.m. on Friday night at the Monroe High School. Please join us and we will cheer them on to victory. Boys and girls basketball team. For the boys and girls varsity basketball teams, they will compete in the first round of NJSIAA tournament on Monday, February 28th. The games will be played at South Brunswick High School, 5 o'clock p.m. for girls versus Old Bridge, 7 o'clock p.m. for boys, Middletown South. Let's pack the gym and cheer on our Viking athletes on to victory. The signing parties. The signing parties were held for senior softball athlete Gianna Vasquez, February 15th. Gianna will be attending the College of New Jersey. A signing party was also held for senior swim athlete Grace Sorrow Chen on February 16th. Grace will be attending Emory and Henry College. That is all I have for you folks today. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Victoria. Moving on to the report of our Superintendent of Schools, Mr. Feder. Mr. Feder, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Joyce. As Joyce did share when we opened today, we did lose one of our district SROs, Lenny Hibbets, and it's a very hard loss for the district. Today, a funeral was held, and it was truly a great honor to him and his family and the police. Lenny was also chief of the fire department in Jamesburg, and they were there. The police did, just a great honoring of his life. It was something to. Glad I was able to be there and support his family as well. He'll be missed, and it was very sad, very sad. So we'll continue to work with the police and whatever his family needs. So we'll let you know that, Joyce. In case you didn't hear my message, I sent out a robocall around 6:30, just announcing tomorrow will be a 2-hour delay. Instead of making the call tomorrow morning, which seemed rather imminent, made it tonight to give people the chance to plan. And the ironic part, of course, is we're going to be talking about school start times, and well, tomorrow everybody gets to sleep a little late. Yay. So we get a 2-hour delay, and everyone sleeps. Hopefully they'll sleep, and we'll be safe. And if we do need to change anything, as I said in the note, then of course I'll make a call tomorrow. But as of now, hopefully it's going to be a 2-hour delay, and we'll be able to move on from there. So tonight we have two events going on for the evening. One is the most important part, and that's honoring our students. And Mr. Varela has put together, and his team has put together a virtual program to honor our National Merit Scholarships, the semi-finalists tonight. And we have 10 of those semi-finalists that are going to be honored, so we'll be watching that shortly. And then at our March 24th meeting, we'll be honoring the commended students, and that'll be 72 National Merit commended students. So great job for the high school and these incredible students and their families. Some other information that is on the board agenda, so we did put the calendar back on the agenda. If you remember, we did speak about the calendar, and there were 2 versions. Yeah. We don't really know what's going to happen with this bill and whether or not we'll be allowed to use snow days, but we did want to get a calendar out to the public and to the staff so that people can start planning any possible vacations or knowing what's happening for next year. If anything does change, and then we'll be allowed to use snow days as virtual days, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But as of now, we are asking you to approve the calendar for next year. I want to give a shout out to Tara Jardulo. Tara Jardulo is lieutenant in the South Brunswick Police Department, also a parent in the district. And Tara represented both the South Brunswick Police Department and the school district at a symposium on school safety yesterday for the county, and did a great job. She was on a panel on 2 different parts of the day. There were 3 panels, and Tara sat on 2 different panels. So great to see one of our people up there doing that. I just want to say thank you to Tara and the police department for making that happen. Another shout out goes to Pierre's. You all know Pierre's. We put a call out, if you all remember, to say we want to try and help honoring our staff, and we always have the inability to purchase food. And we asked local businesses to help out, and Pierre's, of course, has helped out. They helped out multiple times. If you remember, they provided food one night when we were honoring our drivers, and they also then sent over $10 gift cards for us to give out to staff as well. So we'll be raffling those off. So again, thanks to Pierre's. Again, you heard Victoria share a lot about our sports team. We have our bowlers. This is, I think, this is the first boys bowling team to win the state championship in New Jersey. I believe it's the second time they won the tournament champions, but the #1 boys bowling team in New Jersey. That's amazing. And then all the other different events. We have the Vikings basketball. We have the boys and girls track. We talked about Demarion Potts and our wrestlers and girls. And we can do this all day, just honoring these amazing kids and the things they do. So it's always exciting. Today, I'm not going to spend too much time right now. We're going to talk about COVID and masks and all that when we get to old and new business. So we'll be doing that. That's going to be at old business. We'll be talking about masks. I did make a recommendation to the board that they'll be discussing tonight. I did recommend that we go to mask optional starting on March 7th. So if there's going to be any discussion about that, that will happen a little later. And also, I'll be doing a presentation tonight on the school start times and the transportation. So that'll be coming up shortly. I think it's actually coming up very shortly. Other than that, I'm going to turn it back over to you because we have a long night ahead of us.
Yes.
And
Thank you, Mr. Feder. Thank you for your update. Moving on to the recognition, the South Brunswick High School 2022 National Merit Semi-Finalists and Honored Faculty Recognition. And that's over to Mr. Farrella.
I think I'm going to speak for Mr. Varela because we're going to see him up on the screen in just a second. He's here in the audience, but every year we get to honor these students. Tonight, as Scott said, there are 10 semifinalists. A special thank you to Tim Sweeney and Lisa Manganello for putting together the program. And without further ado, this recognition.
Good evening, members of the Board of Education, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, we are fortunate to honor a distinguished group of students and teachers virtually. These students are recognized for their performance on the Preliminary Scholastic Aptitude Test, or PSAT, which is also the National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. Being recognized by the National Merit Organization is truly one of the most prestigious honors a high school student can achieve. National Merit semifinalists represent the top 16,000 of the 1.6 million students who took the PSAT at the same time they did. I'm pleased to say that South Brunswick High School has 10 semifinalists this year, and all 10 semifinalists have moved on to become finalists, which is tremendous news. We also have the distinction of having 72 commended students, and they will also be honored virtually at next month's board meeting. Keeping with a treasured South Brunswick tradition, we invited our students to identify and honor outstanding educators who have made a significant impact on their lives. Each student has inscribed a message for his or her honoree in a book specifically selected for the teacher. Since we are hosting this recognition virtually, I will read excerpts from their messages to the teachers. These books will be given to each teacher in person at a later date. Additionally, certificates of appreciation from President Joyce Mehta and the Board of Education will be provided to all honorees. Before we begin, I'd like to thank my secretary, Ms. Ramona Baker, for coordinating this special honors program, Ms. Marianne Murphy for her work with the certificates, Ms. Lisa Manganello for creating our slides, and Mr. Tim Sweeney for producing this amazing video presentation. As we start our program, I thought I'd share some of the colleges and universities that our semi-finalists apply to for admission. I'd like to now introduce our honorees, as well as the teachers being recognized. Our first spotlight shines on Kevin Chen. In the fall, Kevin plans to major in computer science. One of his proudest accomplishments at SBHS was making the AIM qualifier. Fun fact about Kevin, he loves to eat candy. I'd like to recognize his parents. Kevin would like to honor Ms. Sandra Olson, teacher at Crossroads North. Our next honoree is Ahmanea Hussein. In the fall, Ahmanea plans to major in computer science. One of her proudest accomplishments at SBHS was winning an award at the New Jersey Regional Chemistry Olympics. One fun fact about her, Ahmanea is a lacrosse player. We'd like to recognize her parents. Ahmanea would like to honor Ms. Leanne Stone Ingalls, a former South Brunswick School District elementary teacher. Our next honoree is Eric Lee. In the fall, Eric plans to major in mathematics. One of his proudest accomplishments at SBHS was earning a diploma from the Associated Board of the Royal Schools of Music for piano. One fun fact about Eric, he has a 682-day streak on the Bible app. I'd like to recognize his parents. Eric is honoring Ms. Linda Heffentrager, a teacher at Crossroads South. Our next honoree is Akshay Mystery. In the fall, Akshay plans to major in computer science. One of his proudest accomplishments at SBHS was his team placing top 5 at the MIT Undergraduate Research Technology Conference. One fun fact about Akshay, he loves to play guitar and learning fingerstyle arrangements. We'd like to recognize his proud parents. Akshay is honoring Ms. Marisol Ciccone, a teacher at South Brunswick High School. Our next honored student is Ahmanea Mccondon. In the fall, Ahmanea plans to major in environmental science. One of her proudest accomplishments at SBHS was being one of the founders of an organization called SB Peer Pals. One fun fact about her, she loves to knit and crochet, and we'd like to recognize her proud parents. Ahmanea is honoring Ms. Tara Berniston, a teacher at South Brunswick High School. Our next student is Rushdie Patel. In the fall, Rushdie plans to major in computer science and business. One of her proudest accomplishments at SBHS was being a founder of a nonprofit during quarantine called 4-H Agrezi Journey. One fun fact about her, she manages a website dedicated to music. We'd like to recognize her proud parents. Rushdie is honoring Ms. Judith Lebovich, retired teacher from South Brunswick High School. Our next honored student is Vyas Pujari. In the fall, Vyas plans to major in biochemistry. One of his proudest accomplishments at South Brunswick High School is making it as a semi-finalist in the USA Biology Olympiad. One fun fact, Vyas is an Eagle Scout and loves camping. We'd like to recognize his parents. Vyas is honoring Dr. Roberto DeBarry, a teacher at South Brunswick High School. Our next honored student is Nirad Shah. In the fall, Nirad plans to major in computer science. One of his proudest accomplishments at SBHS was becoming the captain of the school robotics team 750E. One fun fact about him, his favorite ice cream flavor is chocolate chip cookie dough. I'd like to recognize his parents. NEROD is honoring Ms. Melissa Burge, a teacher at South Brunswick High School. Our next honored student is Isha Wegley. In the fall, Isha plans to major in electrical and computer engineering. One of her proudest accomplishments at SBHS was writing and presenting at the MIT Undergraduate Research Technology Conference. One fun fact, Isha knows how to play piano, guitar, and the ukulele. We'd like to recognize her parents. Isha is honoring Dr. Masood Chakar, a teacher at South Brunswick High School. Our next honored student is Swetha Yogaswaran. In the fall, Swetha plans to major in computer science. One of her proudest accomplishments at SBHS was being the co-captain of the Science Olympiad team. One fun fact about her, Swetha won a hula hoop contest when she was 8 years old. I'd like to recognize her proud parents. And tonight, Swetha will be honoring Mr. Stephen Dentler, teacher at South Brunswick High School. To conclude our virtual presentation, I would like to share a few excerpts that our honored students wrote to our amazing teachers. Your class helped me see myself in a new and different light. The confidence I was able to gain with you as a teacher helped me come out of my shell tremendously. In all respects, I really enjoyed sitting in your class at the end of every A day. You made every lesson interesting. You were always an amazing presence in the classroom. I'd like to thank you for the impact you have had on me. You always believed in me and recognized my potential, even when I didn't. And for that, I am entirely grateful. Having you as a teacher was a great experience, and it is part of the reason that I hope to pursue a major in biochemistry in college. I still clearly remember that parent-teacher conference where instead of talking about my grades, you chose to talk about me. That day was so special for not only me, but also my mother. She felt so much more relieved after talking with you. It was the first time since I moved here that a teacher took the time and made the effort to get to know me. And lastly, you were always an amazing presence in the classroom, and I would like to thank you for the impact you've had on me. Our students wrote full inscriptions in books that our teachers will definitely appreciate and treasure. This concludes tonight's presentation. Again, congratulations to our 10 honored semifinalists, their families, and our amazing teachers. Please join me in a virtual round of applause for them. Be healthy and safe, and go Vikings.
Thank you, Mr. Varela.
Amazing. So proud of our students and our staff. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is the presentation for transportation start times. So over to you, Mr. Feder.
All right, welcome everybody, and those watching. How many do we have tonight, Dave?
300 participants watching online.
All right.
301.
All right, so
302.
if I wait a few more minutes, 303. I'll start when we get to 400.
Go.
All right, so tonight we're going to present on work we started back in November. This is relative to concept of what we need to do for transportation, and then how we also weaved in the idea of school start times and how we're recommending that to work. It stems from a board goal. I don't usually read slides. Unfortunately today, due to the nature of this work, I am going to be doing a little bit more reading than normal. In this case, for those that cannot see it, the board will work side by side with administration to develop a plan to address the transportation challenges. Okay, I can't really read these things. Basically, the goal here is we had to deal with the national driver shortage, and along with the driver shortage also comes a extremely large increase in the cost for transportation. If you've been following the news, there are currently many truckers who are protesting in various ways, driving down the highways for all kinds of various reasons right now. And the whole industry of those that require a CDL, a commercial driver's license, has really been upended in the last year due to COVID. So schools have all been impacted. And you know, on our board, if you don't know, Ray over there, say hi, Ray. Ray is a director of transportation in our neighbor, North Brunswick. And he'd be able to tell you better than I the daily challenges that we're facing. Also, I saw in our audience, we have Clyde right over there. Got a driver over there. Can't see who you are because I'm missing there. More drivers, so thank you guys for coming out. And Clyde makes sure the buses run every day. So thank you, sir. But we all know what we're facing, the expenses. I will say we are very happy we were able to work with our drivers to make sure we kept our drivers. And at the same time, we've been able to start recruiting. So it's been a positive last few weeks. Is that right, Kim? Last few weeks in the driver world has been positive, the first change in quite some time. But this goal was really important to the board and then, of course, to the administration. So that kind of stems it, and I'm going to go through. So what we did is we put together a committee. And while you can't read all those names, the committee consists of students, staff, administration, board members, parents. And this committee met 5 times to go through various practices and research and looking at what might work, what are the best options. And I will say there's debates. You know, there's definitely no perfect solution. Actually, I do have a perfect solution. Unfortunately, that perfect solution is a little challenging to get to. But I want to point that out. I want to say there's in the audience today, if you are a member of the committee, could you please just raise your hand? Thank you, guys. Thank you guys for coming out. I know the ones that are not here. And the ones that are not here are probably watching tonight. And I did, for those that are watching, if you didn't check your email, I did send you the presentation from the committee members. So you have it, I just sent it to you around 7 o'clock, so you should have that now. But again, thank you to this committee. And even when they weren't in committee work, they were reading, they were researching. And so it was great to be with a committee like that. So this is important to understand. The goals of this committee, as we said, we have to manage the fiscal impact of transportation. Then we had to also, to do that, one major strategy we knew we had to do was decrease route packages. Again, real quick, a route package is what a bus does in a day. They might do 1 tier, 2 tiers, 3 tiers. Most of our drivers do 2 tiers, and we'll talk more about what we need to do with that. The other component of this was to explore the concept of, are we able to get our high schools to start later because of all the great research that talks about the need for sleep and how high school adolescents, the clock works in their world. And then another major goal was we want to maintain all we do for kids. The district does a lot for kids, from things that start before school and a lot of things that happen after school. So that was the goal of the work, and I do believe we stayed true to that goal during the process. So now I'm going to talk about this concept. As I said, a route package. A route package, currently our district uses doubles, meaning a bus and a driver do, let's say, the high school first, then those buses go to the middle school, then they're kind of done. If they're not, they're done with the regular education routes. They still might be doing a morning route for music, or they might be doing late routes after school, but we do not have the situation where all of our buses do what's called a triple, meaning the bus starts at one school, finishes the route, meaning they pick up all the kids for that school, bring them to the school, drop them off, then go out, pick up new kids for the next school, drop them off, then pick up a whole new group of kids a third time and drop them off. That's triples. This is a non-negotiable in the work we did. We determined that and started with that with the committee. So the committee did not debate this concept. We as administration said this has to be done. And I'm going to show you why that has to be done. If we don't do that and we just run the status quo, which is what we do now, our anticipated projection of new monies, new dollars, was approximately $2 million. To do what we're doing today, tomorrow, is about a $2 million increase due to all those things I talked about in the beginning. That's the amount of money we cannot handle. We cannot manage a $2 million additional cost for transportation right now. So that's why we had to move to triples. And to understand triples again, if we take a look at this, If you look at 21-22, the first line, we do doubles. We'd have 89 route packages. 31 of those, these are all, by the way, regular education route packages. We have a lot more buses, we have vans, we do other routes for special education, but for the major regular education routes, we currently run 89 different route packages during the course of a day. As you know, if you have kids in the school, you might be a situation where on a given day they're late getting to school, late being picked up, or late being dropped off. Because right now, let me ask this question, I know Clyde's in the audience. Clyde, about how often do you drive a bus?
Every day.
Every day. Clyde's job is to be a mechanic, not to drive a bus. And about 7, 8 other non-bus drivers?
All mechanics.
Everyone who can drive a bus has a license is driving a bus every day.
Yeah, they're out.
And this is the way it's been for a while. And while we appreciate Clyde and his colleagues who do this for us every day, you know, we want them to be able to focus on their jobs. But I mean, you know, they're wonderful that they're doing this. We need a different system. So if we stay the status quo next year, we'll need 89 route packages again. But the problem is those costs for a route package next year are substantially more money, massively more money. So triples does this. Triples brings us down from 89 total route packages to 69. 20 route packages is a ton. It also does something else for us. We want our own drivers. We want our own drivers. So right now we have 31 of our own drivers doing the regular education routes. We have other drivers as well. But we give 58 of these route packages outsourced. We don't want that. So if you look at all those 20 reductions are not our drivers, they're the contracted routes. And not only that, we're also going to add more routes to our in-house, pulling from the contracted routes. So that's our move for next year. This is what needs to happen. The question that we were grappling with is, how do you do that? So the first thing that happens is we just took our existing situation and plugged in the triples model. Now, the reason we currently don't do triples is because the start times and end times of our schools do not allow it, meaning the schools are too close to each other. The bus does not have enough time to drop off the students, get back out on the road, pick up new students, and do that 3 times. We have to move the start times. So our expert in transportation, Mrs. Jill Odignon, is our director, and her people. This is what it would be if we did nothing but just move to triples. And for it's a little tough to read. That would leave the exact same start time for the high school, the exact same start time for the middle school, but the elementaries need to be pushed back because the end time of the middle school at 3:10, a 3:30 current end time is not enough time. 20 minutes is not enough time for the drivers to take all the middle school kids home and then get to their prospective elementary schools to pick up students. So that doesn't work. Now, doing this move requires us to put, and this is the tough one, it requires us to put all of the elementary schools together. And the best way to help you understand that is a math problem. If you think of the high school, there are about 2,800 plus students in the high school. The 2 middle schools are about 2,200 students. And the 5 smaller elementary schools come to under, maybe it's like 1,600 kids. When you add the 2 larger schools to the middle school, you have 2,800 for high school, over 3,000 for middle school, and then you drop down to 1,500. That means all of those drivers needed to bus 3,000 kids are not needed anymore. It's inefficient. So what we have to do is move the timings so there's enough time in between each level, each tier, so that the bus can do the triples. Those times were not our goal. That was the minimal, basic, do nothing, think of nothing, just put the times in to make the triples work. That's not where we're ending, but that's where we started. So here's what we did. We formed the committee, we set our goals, we unpacked this problem, which I just described to you. We did an analysis of this. We talked about all of that. We did idea generation, where we talked about what might work. What are some of the ideas out there? We took feedback. We did all these sessions. Ultimately, we identified these areas to get feedback from the community. That's the survey we sent out. Now, I want to talk about the survey for a second. If you notice in the survey, I asked isolated questions. I didn't do comparative work. The reason is explaining all of this in a survey is nearly impossible, and I'm sure people are going to be even confused after I'm done tonight. So what we did is we asked the questions we needed to learn about those things. We just asked them in a way where we can get, hopefully, honest responses. When you ask people to do comparisons and choose between A and B, they really need to understand A and B. And there's way too much complexity in a survey to be able to do that. So what we did is we put the survey together in that manner so we can learn more about people's perceptions and thoughts about high school sleep, about the start and end times of all the school levels, childcare, which became a clear issue in our work, as well as the other clear issue, which was extracurricular activities. These 4 things were dominant in impacting what would ultimately become possible school start times. So here are some of the findings. And again, sorry for all the words. This is not my normal way. But we learned that sleep for adolescents is vitally important. We learned that. We learned that elementary schools cannot be in the middle tier, meaning they cannot be second. Now you're like, why? Well, the reason is transportation reason. It messes up everything when the elementary schools are in the middle tier. So we can't do that. So we learned that. So we could never have a scenario that had them in the middle tier. We learned the impact on the end of the school. So this means the last school in the last tier, the end time of that school was purely dependent on the end time of the school in the first tier. A direct correlation. They had to be related. You could not just separate them out. Doesn't work. We learned the start time for fall sports is on a clock, not only in our district, but when we have away games. That's for middle and high school. That's for fall, primarily because of light. We need light. We learned that childcare costs would have a different cost if you increase the time. If you increase the time of how much time is associated with an after-school or before-school program, you're looking at the after-school having a $1,500 per child annual cost to a family for a child in the program if school ends at 2:15 for elementary. So that's something we learned. We had to go to our Champions program to see what that would be. That's if you use the Champions program. Obviously, there's many other ways to do childcare, but if you use our program in the district, that's the cost we expect to incur for next year if we started an hour and about 20 minutes earlier than we start now. We also learned that almost all school districts, if not all school districts in the state, function on a high school, middle, elementary, or some version of that. We did find schools, sometimes high school and middle are together, but elementary was always at the end of everything we saw. I said almost all because I'm sure there's someone who is doing it differently. We didn't find that in New Jersey. South Brunswick current times are consistent, not always identical to the way other school districts operate. And we did learn, Joyce shared this, that there is a discussion going on at the state level. I think, Joyce, you said you sit on a committee, on a task force for this, looking at this concept at the state level. That's very important. That's a very important topic. So those were some of our findings. Obviously more findings, but those are some of the more important ones that kind of key into where we're going. From there, we asked the students, the community, and the staff for their feedback, and that was really interesting to go through that. So I can tell you this is where we ended. We ended with 2 options. We actually ended with 3 options. But I spoke to Smitha today, I spoke to Deepa today, and I confused both of them. So it used to say option 1 and 2 together, and I combined them. Heck, it's option 1. Basically, this first option is kind of what it looks like now. But this option already includes finding every minute that we could dig out of anything to get us here. That would be a high school start time of 7:35 to 2:20, meaning the high school would start 10 minutes later and end 5 minutes earlier. It's a 15-minute difference in their whole school day. The middle school would be a 10-minute difference in their school day. Starts 5 minutes later, ends 5 minutes earlier. The elementary, while still operating at the same time, would be starting 5 minutes later and ending 5 minutes later. And I got to tell you how many times I said to myself, wait a minute, I want the elementaries to end at 3:30. I'm just going to cut 5 minutes off of their day. Seems logical. Can't do it. Here's the reason. The middle school ends at 3 o'clock. I can't get the buses back to the elementary schools in 30 minutes. I need 35 minutes. And I think Jill, our director of transportation, is probably teary-eyed, thinking that she really needs probably closer to 40 minutes. But I did use that peer pressure. I'm the superintendent, you're the director thing. And I did get her to give me her best times. That's what she gave me. That's what we have to go with. So we're going to talk about, that's one of the options. The other option is wound up being option 3. So options 4 and 5 were eliminated pretty early in the process. They had things about them that just the group felt was not very viable. So it became these 2 options, and option 3, quite different. Elementary would be first, starting at 7:40, ending at 2:15. The high school, and the reason we looked at this was to get the high school starting later to kind of match the research on sleep times and sleep patterns of adolescents. And here in this one, the middle school would be last and quite different. They'd be ending at 3:43. Now again, the time needed from the high school to middle school is 40 minutes. So there's a little bit of play in that last time. Maybe we could end at 3:40. We can still play with that one as well. But for the most part, these are the 2 options. And while I'm not ready to commit they're 100% perfect, they're pretty close. And I want to give thanks to our middle school administrative teams and the high school administrative teams for getting us this far. They had to really play with their schedules, see what was possible, and try to get us here. So I'm going to talk about how we got to these places as well. So the big change here is option 3. That's a significant change for the district from where we were. So we really wanted to explore and see what that would bring us. So in option 3, some things we found that were concerning. One is in option 3, every single child, every single family, every single staff member would have to change their schedule, whatever that is, good, bad, or indifferent, by over 30 minutes. That was every person in the district would have to change. That's an impact of 8,300 kids and the 1,000 staff members and their families. So then we went through it and we tried to look at it with some survey results, and option 3, the elementary school impact. Probably one of the most challenging pieces of this was the child care issue. When you add 80 minutes of after-school child care, because remember, the elementary school in option 3 ends at 2:15. Right now, the late schools end at 3:30, and the other schools end about a half hour, 40 minutes after that. So you're talking about a situation where because remember, all 7 schools have to be at the same time now. All 7 elementaries are together. In that model, they would be starting up to 80 minutes earlier. When we do the math, labor costs are labor costs. We all know labor costs are going way up as well. Our labor costs are going up too. It would cost approximately $1,500 per child for the year additional for those families. The other part that happens, more families will now need childcare that did not need childcare before. So that was a big concern. As a superintendent, I got to tell you, it's a big concern. It's very hard to go forward and ask parents to start paying a lot more money for something they need to have. So that's something that was out there as an impact. The other part of that child care piece is if you have an older sibling right now, middle or high school, in their current schedule, they get home before the elementary kids do. That goes away if the elementary kids finish first. So that ability to use that is just not there. Now, according to the survey, that wasn't a zillion people. It affects who it affects. It's just an impact. Student learning. There were mixed opinions on this topic from the survey and from the group, but a positive outcome that we expect would be that little guys learn better in the mornings and they have rougher times in the afternoon. Now, we have 5 of our elementary schools that have full days, start ending after 1 and 2 o'clock, but this was brought up and something we did factor in as well. The survey results on student learning is the majority of our staff and parents all reported that, well, not all, but I'll show you the numbers in a minute, that 7:30 was just too early. Now, we didn't ask them 7:40, we asked them 7:30. So 7:40, maybe they'd have lesser people would say that's too early. In the middle school, I would say this is where one of our most major impacts occur. So right now in our middle schools, we have 1,000 students involved in the AM music program. They are also, 700 of those 1,000 students currently use transportation provided by the district at a fee. I think the fee is about $100, Dave? $100 to get a bus, and we take the kids, pick them up, we do a full route, and we bring those kids, and that's how we do it. So, if we move the middle school to the end of the day, if you look, that means all of our buses are being used. In option 1, if you see, there's no buses being used at 7 o'clock. So you can drop the kids off, they do their hour program, and then at 8:10 they go to middle school. In option 3, if we want to use buses, that time can't change. Time still needs to be before those elementary runs start. So, there are 3 basic outcomes. You could eliminate the AM middle school music program. It's an outcome you could choose. You can eliminate the transportation for the program, or students can still get there, and they would have a 30 minutes delay until the day starts if we use the transportation. You can do some jury rigging of those options, 2 and 3, but mostly you're looking at an elongated day for middle school music students on those days where they have the music, because they're still coming at the same time they always have, but now their school day is 40 minutes later. It's just the reality of the situation. The other impact also that we found, and we have CJ Hendricks here. CJ's in the back. CJ is our new athletic director, took over for Elaine McGrath. And Elaine was on the committee till she retired in December with CJ. And they reported, we have about 1,000 students in the middle school that participate in something or another, one of the various after-school activities. We did find an important question we wanted to learn about was, would staff, if they ended later, still be able to participate and run programs? 67% of staff in the middle school reported, in middle and high school actually, reported that if you moved their time by at least 30 minutes, they would have to reconsider possibly. Doesn't mean they wouldn't do it. It means it could have an impact. I don't know if it really would or not, but that's what was reported. And I think I shared before, middle school fall sports, and actually we have our middle school fall football coach, Jake is here, Jake Rodriguez, would be in jeopardy. If you're first ending school, they need time to get out, and light goes away at some point. And traveling to other teams, you either have to do one of 2 things. You leave it as is, and all those students leave their classrooms, and they go and they don't learn because they're leaving to go to the sport, which is, it happens. The other part that would have to happen is any of the coaches also have to leave their classroom and then go join their teams on away games at other times. Again, an impact. Is it the end of the world? For some kids, I can tell you it probably would be. Is it the end of the world for a school district? No. None of these things are not doable, but you have to always ask bang for your buck type questions. So option 3, the high school impact. This is where we had a huge positive, right? A huge positive is that that's what we'd be solving. We'd be solving the availability for high school students to get an extra, in this case, about 40, 45 minutes of sleep, which follows the research. So that's a huge positive. Why we would even consider all those other negatives to get to this one positive, right? And when we asked if sleep is desired, 63% strongly agreed of students report that they would prefer a later start. Interestingly enough, however, they also report they do not want to lose afternoon time to complete all their activities. So again, it's a challenge. These are challenging situations. These are not cut and dry, easy things to accomplish. So on extracurricular, as I just talked about, it impacts about 1,500 students at the high school. About half our kids are involved in something.
50% of those students strongly agreed or agreed report valuing the time after school to complete all activities. And if we read the comments, there's comments on both sides of the aisle here. That's just the way it works. I will say, in talking to the student, looking at the students absolutely leaned towards favoring the idea of starting later. That was absolutely there. They would favor that, no question, in the survey results. But they also have other things they talk about, but clearly, I'll be honest, that's what they would favor. 67% of staff, I told you before about the middle school, it was the same, reported, could be an issue for them. So now I'm going to give you some survey results. Interesting. I can't do the whole survey breakdown with you, but here's what we found. 46% of students, when we asked students in grades 7 through 12, 46% of them answered they would prefer to keep the high school where it is or start it 10 to 20 minutes later. That's where they were. From 0 to 20 minutes was just shy of half the students. From 30 minutes or more was 54% of the high school students. Well, 54% of the students said that. So that's interesting. I thought it would be different, but that's kind of where the kids were. When we talked about staff, 56% of the staff answered they would prefer for the high school to stay where it is or go up to 20 minutes start time later. 44% did say move it 30 to 60 minutes. So again, this is what you're dealing with. I dealt with a lot of this. I dealt with a lot of ups and downs and similar responses until it came to the community where it was more of a clear answer that 70% of the community members who answered the survey, and there was about 1,500 community members that answered the survey. There were about 700 staff and 2,100 students. Thank you, Mr. Varela. Thank you, Mrs. Capes, and Mrs. Bino's not here, for sitting their kids down and saying, do the survey. Appreciate that. We didn't do that with the parents, but that's a good idea. We're going to sit them down and make them do a survey. But still, we got about 1,500 surveys from parents. 70% of those parents that answered the survey said the high school should start 30, 60 minutes later. Only 30% said it should stay the same or go to 20. So again, there's good support when you ask the question of sleep and all that. Especially when you ask it in isolation, you do get responses that show that there is a desire here. Not by all, but there is a desire. This is not something we can throw away so simply. It's a reality we have to address, not only because of the survey results, because of the science. So keep going on. The elementary survey results, and this is where we got into our problems. 66% of the staff report that elementary should not start before 8 a.m. 87% of the community said they should not start before 8 a.m. So here's the problem. I have 87% of the community say it should not start before 8 a.m., but 70% of the community wants the high school to start later. The reason these responses are because these were isolated questions. The only way to not get that level of response is you have to pit things against each other. Now, I'm going to spend about a half an hour total on this, doing it like this, and I would say that we have 300 people watching. That means the other 1,200 people are really going to be answering this blindly without all the information. So the data doesn't become all that valuable. So instead, I want them to really know what they thought about certain things. And that's what we found out. They definitely want the high school, the community want the high school to start later, but they do not want the elementaries to start earlier. Being a superintendent is so much fun. So then we go to the staff. 83% of the staff say do not end after 3:30. 64% of the community said do not end after 3:30. Again, not all that surprising that there is no perfect solution that involves 3 tiers. There isn't. Someone has to go first, someone has to go third. Just the way life is. We have no other choice. That, or we need the board to figure out how you're finding a whole heck of a lot of money. So we also asked all 3 groups, what was most important to you? So in this question, 59% of the students said that sleep was in the top tier of the most important, but almost 50% said after school time was most important. Did I mention how wonderful it is to be a superintendent? 50% of the community reports that sleep is either the first or second, but instructional time is the most important. Staff didn't think as much about sleep as the community or the students, but they still believe number one was instructional time. Not very surprised. So those results did not surprise me. But this is the information we have. So this is important, and I want to explain this. We had a committee of about 35 to 40 people on any given night. Those people sat through all of the meetings, heard all the information, read all of the studies, did all that work. When we presented all of this to them, 70% found that option 3, this particular version of option 3, was not viable because of all of these various reasons. That's before they had the survey results. I took the survey results, Jen helped me with the survey results, and we put together, well, this is just reading the survey results. That wasn't actually that was just reading the results. But when you put it all together, and knowing that the committee that did all the work, 7 out of 10 thought that option 3 was not viable. Did their surveys, did all the work. Just does not mean we don't think good things can come from a later start time or other options, but we have to make a decision because this district is in a crisis, and we need to solve that crisis. We tried to solve it with everything we could do. In the end, option 3 had too many red spots, not enough green, and that got us to a point where we reached a recommendation for the board. The recommendation, my recommendation to the board, is option 1 with these times. These times represent all we could gain out of the schedules and out of the minutes available to us. It does a little bit. It gives the high school a 10-minute increase in sleep. Certainly not what our goal was. We would have liked to do more. And it ends the elementaries 5 minutes too late because the families didn't want that, the staff didn't want that. I can't find any more minutes unless we do something. What we'd have to do to find any more minutes is we have to address instructional time. We have to remove it in order to make it so that we could start the high school later, but not have the elementary end any later. Is the high school would have to start at 7 something later than 7:35. If it's 7:45, I have to pull 10 minutes out of student learning. There's no other place to pull it. None. I have to then pull, if I want the high school to start later than 7:45, I have to pull another 20 minutes out. Whatever minute it is, if I don't want the elementaries to end any later, it has to come out of the morning, but the end of the high school cannot change. The 2:20 end time cannot change unless we also change the elementary end time of 3:35. Now, I want to explain how we even got to this, because this wasn't just, we didn't just sit around, twiddle our thumbs and get to this. This took work. So how did we get there? The first thing we did is we had to align all the elementary schools. Am I happy about that? I am not happy about having to do that. I am not happy to have to tell our Brooks, Deans, Indian Fields, and Dayton families and staff that their schedules are being upended. I don't like having to do that. For some people, this is a hardship. They're now going to have to incur AM costs for childcare where that never existed before. That's not good. We have staff members that will now need to figure out childcare because their systems are already there. One of the reasons we wanted to get, two of the reasons we wanted to get this done now, and we moved fast. One, we need to get the bids out for the buses. That's huge. The later we take, the more money it costs. It's the way it works. The other reason, we wanted to give our families any changes that might come about enough time to manage their change. So this is 6 months in advance. That's the most time we were able to get. But we had to do that, and that is not a fun thing as a superintendent or a board to have to do. But it had to happen. No matter how we slice this, the 7 schools needed to be on the same timeline. The other thing we did is we took 15 minutes out of the high school day. We already, this schedule accounts for a reduction already of 12 instructional minutes of high school learning every day. Already accounts for it. Hear that clearly. That means if we are going to move the high school past 7:35 start, the only place to take the time is either out of high school learning or make the elementary kids stay later. But if it's right that elementary kids should not be learning any later, you're helping one, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul at that point. Why would you do that? That doesn't make any sense. So the choice is either take more instructional time after the 12 minutes we already took, or we can't do it on this option. The other thing we did is Mr. Varela and his team found 3 other minutes in the course of the schedule. Thank you for that. I know it sounds like 3 minutes, Scott. 3 minutes is not easy. These schedules are not built around fluff. So finding any amount of minutes is difficult. But we're not going to take more than 12. That was authorized by the Board of Education. We're not doing that. The next one was in the middle school. To get that schedule to work, we needed the middle school to also lose 10 minutes. And again, if you're not following it, from high school to middle school, we need 40 minutes to drop the kids at the high school, get those buses back on the road, pick up more students, and get to the middle school. That's the way it works. So we have to take time from somewhere else. There is no more time. So we found the 10 minutes. Again, thanks to Mrs. Capes, Mr. Ryman's here from North, and they found us the 10 minutes. In fact, they have multiple ways to find us 10 minutes. So I don't have exactly how that's going to be tonight, but they're going to give us the best options. So we'll have that for you. The next thing we did is we squeezed every single second out of the elapsed time between the tiers. There literally is no more time. We cannot make anything start earlier or later unless you move the other time with it. It's just not possible. That's how we made that schedule happen, which is not ideal. The elementaries are ending a little too late, and the high school's not starting late enough. Not ideal. But here is the perfect solution. Remember I told you I had the perfect solution. This is it. All schools start at 8:15, and all schools end at 2:45. Board, you can thank me. I've solved your problem. All you need to do is find me 130 drivers willing to work 3 hours a day and only get paid for 3 hours a day of work. That's all you need. Piece of cake. We can't get 50 drivers on any given day. Now, there's no way we're getting 130 drivers to do one route and then call it a day. Not happening. But that's ideal. See, I figured it out. Then I only need about $4 or $5 million bucks. Just a little bit. And if you don't mind, we're going to take away a lot more instruction time. That's okay. So if you can do that for me, I will give you your perfect solution. No one's jumping up and down for my idea. Sorry. I want to end this by saying there really is no perfect solution. And I want to end on this point. While this concept of sleep has been brought up, and we're not able to accomplish all we wanted to accomplish with it, it's a real situation, and we're not letting it die. I couldn't figure out how to get us there at this moment, but it doesn't mean we're willing to give up on it. We have, Joyce is on a state commission for this. We hope to learn from them, because the problem here is when you're an isolated district, and this is where South New Jersey, working in locals, not in county systems, makes it more difficult. If you go to other places, Colorado, the Carolinas, Virginia, Maryland, they're county systems. They can make decisions by the county. And if the whole county moved to option 3, then it wouldn't be that much of a problem with certain things. If that's how the system was built. But we're one. We're one. Our kids travel all over the place. People come all over the place to us. It's just not something we can solve on our own as well as we would like. But the research is strong. This is important. It's bigger than us, but it's important. So while I can't recommend at this time to go to option 3 or a version of that, we tried to push as far as we could. And I know I've been asked, Scott, can you get me 5 minutes more? Can you get me 10 minutes more? The only way to get any more time and still adhere to what we asked our community and what we found out in our work is you have to take more instruction time away from the high school kids. That is the only available solution left. Or you have to make the elementary kids end late, or start them way earlier than they should, and sacrifice a lot of problems in the middle school. Those were too big for us. The problems with childcare, huge. You know, maybe not for anyone in this room, I have no idea. It wouldn't affect me, my kids are in college. I pay enough childcare in college. But for people that have little kids, and have 3 little kids all in elementary school, you could be looking at an extra $4,500. Or worse, I didn't need childcare until you moved the school to $215. Now I need $5,000 a year childcare per kid. It's difficult. I don't have the best solutions to meet everyone's needs, but the work has been done. We've been fair, we've been honest, and I'm comfortable with my recommendation, and I hope you'll support it. And that it does end the presentation. And I thank you all. I thank the 4 board members who are on the committee. And I know that there'll be time for public comment, and that does end it. Before we give it to the public, if that's going to be happening, I'll stay up here and ask other questions from the board.
Mrs. Rogers?
Hi there. First, thank you, Scott, Joyce, and the committee, the board's committee members, as well as the public, for participating in it. I know it's a lot of work. I do have just a couple questions, if you don't mind. When you looked at the middle school, was there discussion around moving the middle school music to the afternoon?
Yes.
And what was the outcome of that?
If you move the middle school music to the afternoon, now you have students who will be in the music program, cannot play a sport, cannot join a
right.
club.
Right. Right. That, yeah, completely forgot that, so thank you. A lot of discussion around Princeton being able to do this. Can you explain why Princeton can do it and we can't?
Yeah, we actually had two districts in the state were brought up. One was Princeton. So Princeton is about yay big compared to us, and they also have their middle and high school are kind of right near each other in the middle of town. What they were able to do is they just were able to take their high school and move it up, I think, 28 minutes to be at the same time as their middle school.
So they have a dual, they
just put them up
pickup.
there, so they just were able to do that and manage that and deal with the cost. They weren't dealing with 42 square miles. They weren't dealing with all the factors that we deal with. They did it before COVID, where they might not have been facing the same issue of finding, I don't know how much, see, they have a lot of walkers. So we have almost no walkers to the high school.
Yeah.
So for us, just so you understand busing, when we put a bus together for the high school, that bus is actually outfitted with 60 to 65 students. That's how we schedule our high school buses. You're like, well, you can't put 65 kids on a bus. No, you can't. But we also account for attrition. I know that we're not going to get all of the buses filled. However, to build the schedule, the 50 or so buses that currently do, Pete, do you know how many buses there are at the high school? Do you know offhand or no? 50, 55? So that's 55 buses.
Right.
To add the middle school in at the same time, you need all new buses. So you're looking at another about 45 buses, all at the same time now. The other problem with that is all those buses, half of those buses are only going to do one run.
Right.
Because the elementary won't need all those buses anymore. Because the high school and the middle school is about 60, 65% of our population. And the elementary, a lot more kids walk to elementary than they do to middle and high school. So even though the numbers might get closer, a lot of those kids don't require a bus. So all those buses that we just hired to do one run, they're done at the end of that run. It's over. That's a fortune to do that.
Okay.
So while we looked at that, we can't. We learned, Milburn studied this process for 18 months. And their outcome after 18 months was they moved the high school 15 minutes. And they moved the middle school 10 minutes.
Do you know if they kept, or if they changed the end time, those 15 minutes, or did they lose
I actually
instructional?
don't.
Oh, okay.
Joyce, do you know that? No.
Okay.
I
not
understand
sure.
it was very successful move
Okay.
from what
Yeah,
I've read.
I just didn't know if they
Yeah,
lost
I
instructional
don't
time.
know. But the reality is, the reason everyone hasn't just done this is because of these problems with it.
Right.
And I don't think there's a person who wouldn't want to have the kids that need sleep to sleep. Why would you want that? And I was talking to David, and I read a New York Times article. It's a very interesting article. And the article it was a COVID-related article talking about the science, right? And how we listen to the science. We should listen to the science. Well, I don't know all of you in this room, but I know one thing about all of you. Y'all don't listen to the science. I know that without knowing you. We all don't follow all the science on health. We don't. I would be not allowed to breathe if I don't eat anything that the science says I should eat. Let's be honest. Unless sugar and pizza is part of the science, I don't follow the science. We choose to follow the science in our lives as a matter of convenience for the most part. We listen to the science that works for us at that time. Anyone drive over 55 miles an hour? Higher rate of a chance of a car accident when you're above the speed limit. Do we all follow the speed limit or go under it? No. There's science everywhere, and everybody listens to the pieces of the science that work for them. That's the reality. While I want this science to be, I want to be able to have every kid who needs to sleep. They'll be better at everything if they do. That's what I would want. That's the science. But why don't we? Because there's other things that interfere. They talk about food. If you want to follow the science for food, you're probably not going to have too much taste. Salt and sugar, don't eat those two things. Or eat them in such moderation you might not like the food. This is the reality. People pick and choose the science. I wanted to do this science. We tried. I can get a little bit of it. I can't get all of it. Go ahead.
I just have two more. Do we have any input yet? And I know this is a question that you're going to say no, so I don't even know why I'm asking. The S2 funding, because
No,
we
no,
don't know what's breathing
No.
down our neck yet.
The S2 information will come out around March 15th.
Right.
If that happens and we get put back on S2, we are scheduled to lose somewhere between $2 and $4 million before we wake up that morning. I am hopeful that does not happen, but I cannot answer whether it will happen.
And lastly,
This is the fourth question of the two.
I know.
So-
Well, you know me by now. The instructional time is what really concerns me, because without those extra 3 minutes that Peter found, Mr. Varela, apologies, at first I calculated we're looking at 50 days in total, but now it's 40 days lost instructional time. And I based my calculation, I just want to know if I did this right.
I can tell you did not do it right.
Well, why, I came up with, where's my notes? So you're losing 12 minutes a day at 5 days a week. Now, again, it's higher because we have, I didn't count for days off, so I'll adjust that. So you're talking 60 minutes a week of instructional time, is that correct?
It's an hour.
At 180 days, I didn't do the 180 days, I just did a quick calculation. So I came up with 40 days, so I'll drop that to say a month's worth
8.
of learning loss.
8. The numbers are 8 days.
8 days? No, over the course of a year?
It's-
Okay, I based it on.
I was pretty good at math.
I based it on the 10 months, but full months, which is wrong. That's
It's
why
8 days,
I
but-
wanted to ask you, what is the total instructional time we're losing?
But I'm going to be realistic about it. While it is 8 days of actual time across an entire year, it's not actually 8 days of learning they'll miss. Because teachers are really good at what they do.
Right.
And what they'll do is they'll manage the 85 minutes versus the 88 minutes.
Okay.
And they'll make that work.
Because we have to meet the curriculum.
I'm honestly saying, and Jen, I think will join me, 88 to 85 is a manageable.
Okay.
It's a manageable shift. If
Okay.
it wasn't, I'll be honest with you, I would have a hard time recommending it. I wouldn't want to recommend that we can't deliver the curriculum.
Right.
I am confident and comfortable with our staff's abilities to manage the 3 minutes per block, which only affects 3 minutes of that class every other day, or 1.5 minutes a
Right,
day
correct, right.
for a class. So at the end of the day,
It's still 5 days, though, for each kid.
it works out to be lost instruction time.
Right.
So we have to try and balance what is acceptable loss. We believe, and the board felt, 3 minutes per block was acceptable loss.
Okay, thank you.
To my right, any questions? To my left, Mr. Nathanson.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Fetter, for the really well thought out report. I just want to thank the Transportation Committee. Joyce was the chair, and we had a very good group of parents, students, board members, teachers, administrators. So we were well informed as we went along and did this process. And it's more of a statement than a question, I guess. So back in 2017, thereabouts, 2019, Chris Christie went ahead and had the Department of Education look at exactly like at this start time. Department of Education did a whole thick report, and nothing happened because exactly what we did happened then too. It's just that they found out there were too many moving pieces to get to where we wanted. And I believe at that time that's when Princeton decided to do what they did. But like you said, the high school and the middle school are on top of each other. The district is 80% or more walkers, so they can do this. And I agree with you. It's something that we should continue to look at. And, you know, if transportation for some reason down the road works itself out, that's great. If someday we get the funding we're supposed to be getting, which in 20 years on this board we never have gotten. So I'm hoping someday maybe they'll come up with a formula that actually is realistic for school districts. S2 isn't. So again, I want to thank everybody for the work and Mr. Fetter for your work. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Raj.
A big thank you to Mr. Feder, your team, my colleagues on the board who are on the committee, all the administrator, teachers, parents, the community members, everybody who invested their precious time and effort on the committee to help us come to this point. As I see, the challenges were twofold. It's a constraint optimization problem with the transportation being what it is, and the students not getting enough sleep. So I'm curious to know if, now the transportation piece has been addressed adequately. We know the challenges very well now. The second problem about children, about our students getting enough sleep, I'm curious to know if there was any conversation around sleep hygiene or say blue light exposure and its impact on the quality of sleep and the duration of sleep, and if the committee ever had a chance to explore that angle. I know the mandate wasn't on that, but we are talking about sleep so much, so I thought I might as well ask.
Yeah, we never addressed it as a committee. We did not address either of those as a committee, but that could be the follow-up work, right, is what do we do? I know I was talking to another board member who was talking about how they manage their own child and the challenges that that imposes for a parent of a young teenager, even a middle schooler, with managing the technology in the evening, with getting a child to sleep. And then, of course, the rhythms of the child, not even falling asleep, if they even go to bed, are they actually going to sleep? And all of those real challenges that exist. And while it's nice to say, just don't do that, it doesn't work. I mean, if you have teenagers, you know.
I don't have one.
It doesn't work. But I think the concepts of looking at what might be able to happen, if the transportation can't happen, what else could, is interesting. So I thank you for that.
Anybody else? Mr. Kena.
I just wanted to thank my colleagues and those that were on the committee for all the feedback and the great dialogue and the back and forth. It was a very enlightening experience, and I thank you for the time that you put into it. I really want to stress on the safety. And Mr. Fetter, you put information out there. I really want to stress on the 40 minutes between the high school and the middle school with this schedule. It works, but if you put it into context, and the drivers that are here know, from one end of the town, from the high school to one end of the town is 10 minutes. Average bus makes about 10 bus stops, somewhere in that area. Takes about a minute to 2 minutes average to drop off a group of students. So 10 bus stops, 2 minutes, that's 20 minutes, 10 minutes to one side of the town, and then 10 minutes back. You're right at the 40-minute mark, and that's with no traffic. And if you push it anymore, you're taking the driver's attention away from the safety. We all drive in this township, and you know how crazy the traffic is in this township. Drivers have a huge responsibility of watching every student walk off of that bus in the afternoon and making sure that the traffic has stopped around them and making sure that the traffic hasn't tried to go up on the sidewalk to go around them. So if you cut any more and try to squeeze that any more, you're really jeopardizing the safety of the students.
Just so you know, there's no conversation to do anything more with the in-between times.
Correct.
None. It can't be. It's not even on the table. So I can alleviate you of that worry.
Actually, if I may,
Mrs. Rogers.
just want to make sure. Actually, that brings up a good point. I think you said that Captain Ryan or Lieutenant Ryan was on the committee.
Lieutenant Chardulo. Lieutenant Chardulo.
Okay, so this option of moving the three options that was discussed with them, and was there any input in terms of the traffic, what that will do?
The times, the traffic, if you try to do my brilliant option, would be relatively insane for the community.
That's the 8:15.
But really what we're talking about is not all that dissimilar to what we're doing now.
Okay.
So,
okay.
yeah, there's no issue.
Thank you.
No? So I'd just like to say thank you to Mr. Feder and to all my colleagues here on the board and to the task force members that we have here in the audience and to those task force members at home. This has been an extremely challenging, but I've learned so many things about transportation and what have you, and all these technical terms and tiers, and thank you to Mr. Keener as well, who's also been helping me today. So, I'd just like to say that, as I think most of you know exactly where I stand on the science and the sleep studies here, but I understand the logistics and all the challenges that we're dealing with. So just wanted to say a huge thank you to everybody that's here in the audience, and to all the students and to all the parents, and to the community members and to all the staff who participated in the surveys, because I know that took time too. So I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everybody.
Thank you, George. And I echo that for our committee, so thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next part of our agenda, and that's public comments, and that will be on agenda items only. The Board of Education recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on school matters of community interest. Complete copies of the rules that govern this portion of the meeting are available to the public at the back of the room, or you can obtain an advance copy by contacting the board office during regular business hours. We reserve the right to limit each speaker to no more than 3 minutes. It is our plan to listen to each member of the public. We will note all questions and comments made. Once all questions and comments are made by all members of the public, the Board of Education will respond, if necessary, to questions or comments in the most timely and efficient manner available. Please consider not repeating comments and questions made by other members of the public. I ask that you state your name, your place of residence, or your group affiliation. Mr. Palowski, I understand that we have one registered speaker this evening.
Yes, at this time we do. Is Rachel Ottram here?
Rachel?
Please state your name, residency.
Good evening. I live at 7204 Laurel in Monmouth Junction. Good evening, South Brunswick Board of Ed. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak this evening. Thank you to all of the board members for all your hard work. I know the Board of Ed job is not ever easy. I am a parent of a rising senior. I am here tonight to express my support for the concept of a later start time for the high school. I understand that in order to facilitate a later start time, we may have to sacrifice to have that happen. I'm speaking from a personal perspective, although I know what the data and research says about letting our teens sleep later. The data is vetted and it's crystal clear. The later start times are in the best interest of our teens. My son is a child who has ADHD and has a very hard time sitting for 90 minutes of class instruction. As an adult, I have a hard time sitting for 90 minutes. He often takes breaks throughout the day. After school, he is either working until 10 p.m. at night or doing baseball, which at times does not finish until later in the evening. Children with ADHD, along with regular teens, don't always fall asleep easily. He, like most teens, has after-school responsibilities that end later in the evening. A later start time would help my son to have more time to fall asleep in the morning, have more time to fall asleep at night, knowing that he had more time to sleep in the morning. The second caveat to this, which doesn't sound like everyone is on board with it, is that would be slicing some time off of the instructional time, which would benefit him and actually facilitate his ability to probably sit in class for longer periods of time and take less breaks. And I bet this may be true of other kids just like him who often need breaks. Now, I thought you guys were going to say you were going to cut around 5 minutes off. So I'll say that I do not believe cutting 3 to 5 minutes off each time class period will be detrimental. A therapist once told me to ask myself, will this matter in 5 minutes, 50 minutes, or 5 years? And if the answer is no, let it go. I do not believe that starting later and possibly cutting a few minutes off each class period will impact the trajectory of our children's academic growth or success. I do believe allowing them to get more rest and be less stressed in school is what will matter in the long run. My understanding is that this change will also be more fiscally responsible for the district. How can we argue against best interest and saving money is a no-brainer to me. I'm here to support a later start time and reducing class periods to be able to facilitate this to start. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay.
Hello again. Nice to see everyone. I want to start by saying thank you.
Just please
sorry,
state
my
your
name's
name.
Al. Yes, sorry, forgot. Alec Wallen. I live at 11 Greenwood Avenue in Monmouth Junction, Kingston part of the township.
Thank you.
Yes. So I want to start by thanking Scott Fetter and the whole Transportation Board for the work they did. It was an educational experience for me. I particularly appreciated the way the whole process was developed. I thought it was very open and very inclusive. And I really learned both process and substance. But I'm here to voice my support for picking option 3. And it's my understanding that as the board, you actually have the authority to choose to accept the recommendation of Scott Fetter or not. And I'm hoping that you will actually choose to not accept his recommendation, but go with option 3. Let me say a few words as to why. First, I think it's actually telling that one of the things that Superintendent Fetter said right here, just a few minutes ago, is that if this were something done at a larger scale, county scale, state scale, then it would be easier to go with something like option 3. What does that tell you? It tells you that what's really driving this is sports, because that's the only thing that would really change. It's the only thing that would really change. And if sports is what's driving it, please consider that the sports would not become impossible, right? The time of sunset in the fall is till 6. You can get a lot of sports in till the sun has set, until November, right? In addition, it's only a change of 35, 40 minutes. It's really not so big. But here's what is big, the science. So I just want to share a couple little quick points. This is from an article called Clinical Research News. I can share it with anyone who wants. There's a study done not that long ago. About 60% of students in high schools that started at 8:35 slept 8 or more hours on school nights. In schools starting at 7:30, only 34% did. 60% versus 34%. You're talking almost twice as many. What difference does this make? Well, there's a little inconvenience from, on the one hand, sports going a bit later and running into sunset. On the other hand, sleep-deprived students report more symptoms of depression, thoughts of suicide, substance abuse, other at-risk behaviors. They get into car accidents. They're having a lot of risky sex. If you can give them more sleep, one study in Jackson Hole, the car crash rate declined 70%. We are talking lives here, people. Lives, not to mention performance. So, last thing I want to say, yes, no one else has done this in this state. Lots of people, lots of districts have done it in other states. But no, we would be leading the way. Is that such a bad thing? Well, you might say, look, we're going to try to address this on the state level. It doesn't happen easily at the state level. Why? Not only because it's hard to get the legislature to pay attention. My time? Please, let me ask for 30 seconds. Okay. If the legislature does decide to put this on their agenda, they're going to say, well, let's let this happen at the local level, right? You know that. This is our opportunity to lead, and this is the time to lead, because this is the time when everything is going to shift anyway. People are going to hate shifting again. But while they're shifting now, because they got to shift, this is the time to do it. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Walden. Mr. Rodriguez.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you. That was very enlightening, Mr. Federer. You did a great job with your presentation, and I'm thankful to the board and everybody else that participated in the study.
Just your name,
I'm sorry,
please.
Jake Rodriguez, 62 Heather Court,
Thank you.
Monmouth Junction. The superintendent introduces me so many times, I figured everybody knew me by now. I'm going to come at this with two different angles. First, as the most important angle, which is being a parent. I've had 4 children, 2 of my own and 2 stepchildren, who lived with me for most of their middle school, for all of their middle school and high school lives, as teenagers, as young adults. And all 4 of them came to Crossroads. All 4 of them graduated from South Brunswick High School. The first one in 1995, the last one in 2006. All of them had the schedule that presently exists. They all got up early. They were not sleep deprived because, as a parent, my wife and I would make them go to bed earlier because they had to get up earlier. And I think that's the responsible thing to do as a parent. I realize other people have other challenges, and I respect that. But it's important that, you know, if your child has a commitment, if they have to get up at 6, then they should go to bed a little earlier. And then there's no sleep deprivation, there's no mental health problems. All 4 of them graduated from South Brunswick, all 4 of them went to college. 3 of them are public servants, and the other one owns her own business in Florida. They're all doing great. So I just want to say that that's part of the deal. I mean, you don't have to, your child doesn't have to be sleep deprived. They have to go to bed at the proper hour. If you move the scheduled time back an hour, that tells the kid, well, you know what? I could stay up an extra hour. And they still sleep the same amount of time, okay? As a football coach and as somebody who's been in this community now, this is my 16th year as coach of this building here and Crossroads South, Crossroads football team, as well as running a strength and conditioning program, which I ran this afternoon and yesterday and the day before after school. Had 61 kids there today. It's important. It's important. I also coached baseball at the high school for 4 years. Coached the girls' basketball team at Crossroads. It's not just it's just sports. Athletics is an important thing. Music in the morning is an important thing for those children. 1,000 children getting something out of the music industry, and possibly can go on to do great things. I've had 27 kids that participated in football in this program who have gone on to play college football, and 17 of those kids got a full scholarship to college. Okay, that's not just, it's just athletics. It's important. It's important. It's a self-building, confidence thing. It helped me. Okay, I was a shy kid, got into playing football and baseball. And yeah, you can believe that I was a shy kid. I'm not a shy kid anymore, but that's because of athletics. Athletics gave me that confidence and built me up to be the person that I am today. Okay, I've served many roles in this community: deputy mayor, planning board, you name it. I haven't sat up there yet, but maybe someday. But I just want you to, I believe in option 1. I appreciate that. I think that that's the way to go. Children, the younger children don't have after-school activities such as sports, okay? The other 2, the middle school and the high school, do. All right, I thank you for your time and have a great night.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Anybody else like to say anything? Oh, yes. Thanks. Yes, yes. Thank you, Scott.
Hi, Lee Blankstein, 46 Davids Court. I have a question for Mr. Federer. Why can't the middle school during the day have band practice for the kids like some other districts do, instead of having it in the morning when they don't have to get up early? Because a lot of school districts have that. So is this something you could look into?
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for your question.
Won't take up too much of your time. My name is Priya Rege. I have 3 children in the district: high school, middle school, elementary
One
school.
second.
Sorry. Yes.
Please continue.
Okay.
Name and address, please.
My name is Priya Rege. I live at 115 Eleanor Drive. I'm a parent to 3 children in the district: high school, middle school, elementary school. I think it bears repeating that nobody here, if we could come to a conclusion where we can start school later without impact to any of our other programming, nobody would be against it. I think the debate starts when we need to prioritize what we need to cut out of our schedule in order to allow for later sleep. There's a lot of debate on this in the community. One thing I'd like to make sure I say is that there is no us versus them. There is no, I want my children to sleep later and they don't want it. It's not as simple as that. We all want what is best overall for our children. For those of people here who love studies, I will say success is actually, several studies have showed this, that success is actually a result of the opportunities that your children are exposed to. And for that reason, I think a lot of parents don't want to lose programming like music or sports or after-school activities or co-curricular activities. Instead of saying us versus them, let's start working towards an overall healthy curriculum that includes mental health support, instructional support for those students who need it. Let's talk about teacher engagement and burnout. And as part of that discussion, include later start times for our students. If we work together, I'm sure we'll be able to reach there, but the us versus them rhetoric has to go. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any comments? No? So I'm closing this portion of the first opportunity for public comments. Moving on now, the reading of the policies, and I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to engage in the first reading of the policies, which we went over in our meeting on Tuesday, February 22nd. In attendance were Mr. Pawlowski, our business administrator, Ms. Mehta, board president, Ms. Karthik, Mr. Scoletti, and Ms. Malloy White, our assistant superintendent for human resources. Starting with policy 2415.05, student surveys, analysis, evaluations, examinations, testing, or treatment. It's mandatory policy. Policy number 2431.4, prevention and treatment of sports-related concussions and head injuries, another mandatory policy. Policy 2622, student assessment, another mandatory policy. Policy 3233, political activities. Policy 5460, high school graduation, another mandatory policy. Policy 5541, anti-hazing, it's a mandatory policy. Policy 7540, joint use of facilities. Policy 8465, bias crimes and bias-related acts, it's a mandatory policy. And finally, policy 9560, administration of school surveys. I'd like to go into 3 of the policies that we spent more time on, starting with policy 5541, anti-hazing. This is new and is mandatory. PL 2021 C208, designated as Timothy J. Piazza's law, was passed and approved on August 24th, 2021, and goes into effect on March 1st, 2022. The new law requires public and non-public high schools and middle schools to adopt an anti-hazing policy. Also, policy 8465, another mandatory revised policy on bias crimes and bias-related acts. The Uniform State Memorandum of Agreement between education and law enforcement officials, MOA addendum, titled Responding to Hate Acts and Bias-Related Acts, Gender Equity or Expression, and National Origin has been added to the protected class of individuals pursuant to NJSA 2C 16-1, bias intimidation. I'm sorry, I missed one. And finally, policy 5460, high school graduation. It's been revised, and it's another mandatory policy. updated language and provisions from NJAC 6A 8-5.1, 6A 8-5.2, and 6A 8-5.3. These revisions provide greater clarity regarding the graduation assessment requirements for the classes of 2023, 2024, and 2025, and updates to the high school diploma criteria for out-of-school individuals. The policy committee discussed the mask optional environment that is permissible until March 7th. As a committee, we felt allowing anyone the option to wear a mask was a health decision parents, staff, or students can make for their own well-being. Based on the committee's recommendation, I call for a motion to move to a mask-optional educational environment on March 7th. Can I get a second? Seconded by Mrs. Karthik. Is there any discussion?
So you're saying that we go mask optional on March 7th?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? So it's been moved and properly seconded that the mask. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So do we have a word on masking on the bus yet? No?
It is still a federal mandate. At this time, regardless of what the board decides for in-school and outdoors, buses will still be masked unless there's a change at the federal level.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Are we just voting on that one? Because I have a comment on two of the policies. Are you just?
There's a motion on the table. It's a yes.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Any more comments or questions? Well, all in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Abstentions? Motion carries. Are there any questions about any other policy?
I just have two. That are not indicated as mandated. I noticed that they're revised. One is 3233 and 7540. Is there any chance that we can at least get an understanding of what was revised versus comparing the information?
All of these policies are up on the drive.
Yeah.
These are our first read.
Yeah.
If you need more information on strike-throughs, they should be up there
On the portal, not the
on the policy.
the backup that we received.
Not the backup.
Okay, all right, on the, okay.
So
Thank you.
remember, these are for first read only. So we have till the next board meeting, we'll see a second read. So all board members, feel free to get to that drive and read through any policies that you might have questions on.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Pulaski, for that clarification. Yes, Mr. Nathanson.
Mr. Nathanson.
Yeah, I just have a logistics question, either Mr. Pulaski or Federer. Do we need to actually take a roll call vote on the mask, or that is sufficient, what we just did?
No, I wouldn't say you'd have to do a roll call vote on a mask policy like that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nathanson. Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you. Back in the hands of our president.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. So moving on now for the agenda review and the walkthrough, and I'm going to hand it over to our colleague, Mr. Pulaski.
So all of the principals left. And they never stick around for the best part of the meeting, I'm telling you. Real quick on the agenda review, not a long agenda, but some really interesting pieces to it. We have a 3-year program for the ELS school years of 21 through 24. We have a couple of purchases over the bid limit that need board approval. One is for computer lab furniture at the high school, and the second one is for some equipment for our grounds department. We also have a technology purchase order for one of our non-public schools. And we had a transportation route that was changed, updated. I would like to say that we are approving some bus sales. Again, our lease purchase program's been instrumental in all of our transportation work that we've done. The buses that we have in house are all under 5 years, except for a few old. And this program allows us to keep our fleet up to date. Lastly, we have our intimidation bullying reports and a school calendar. The rest is travel-related expenses and student field trips. Provided all of this in the update. You are approving tonight your board committee liaison assignments, and that's our agenda review.
Thank you, Mr. Pulowski. Yes, Mr. Keeder.
Yeah, just two quick comments. First, Mr. Pulowski, nice job on selling used buses, knowing what we pay for new buses and what you got for used buses. Nice job. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I got chills. That was a BA moment, I'm telling you. Not a lot gets me chills and excited, but seeing that number come in on those buses was like, Clyde, thanks for taking care of them. You guys did a wonderful job because they brought in some decent cash.
Well, I've got a used car I'd like you to work on for me personally.
Give it to Clyde.
And secondly, I'd like to, Ms. Rogers, thank you for putting together the committee list and sending it out to us. I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you. So moving on to old business, the first item is a tabled item from previous board meetings, and it will be discussed at our Board of Ed retreat. Any comments to that? No? Okay, so moving on to that, now we will be discussing masks, and I'm going to actually add it to the COVID protocols to be discussed together, and I will be handing it over to Mr. Feder.
All right, thank you. I just want to go over some things. When you do masks, to kind of lay out what we worked on with the nurses, if you were to approve that, which you did, so I can go over this. So it's clear for the public, mask optional indoors and outdoors for all. As Dr. Raj pointed out, mask mandate will still remain at this moment until the federal government makes a change regarding all students and staff on school buses, school vans, any school vehicles that are driving children around, not if drivers are just without students. Masks, just so we're clear, masks still may be required when entering the nurse's office. So that's the way we're going to approach that, and that will be a situational, that'll just be situational. It's going to be depending on the situation, on the school they're in, on the situation of why someone's going to the nurse, and that's going to be managed locally at a school level. So I'm telling the community now, and backing this for our schools, that could look a little different at each school. It depends on how things are operating and what's going on with the students and the outbreaks, where we are with COVID in each building, so it's going to look different. But I don't think it'll look all that different, to be honest. Also, in the event of an outbreak, it is still possible that we will have to reinstate masks for even a class. It could be a whole school, it could be the whole district. Those things are possible. I'm not anticipating them, but they are possible. I'm just putting that out there. But after masks, what I want to share with the board is we're still looking at other things. Student exclusions, for example. Right now, once you remove masks, we're also looking to reduce the exclusions. So I'm going to bring this up, Mr. Mitchell, at policy. But I want to mention it here, and then we should probably meet. And this is the work we were supposed to do, but then they told us that they were giving us new data. Well, they gave us the new work. Okay. So now we're ready to go to the next step. We'll be adopting some of those other, because what we have is we have about a 4 or 5 page policy that outlines all of these various things, but we're going to need to update those now. So we were planning to update them at the policy meeting the other night, but then as I shared with you, we received this news that they were coming out with all the new information. Of course, they didn't really come out with anything new. They just reiterated their same information in a different way, basically. But the area of student exclusions, and working with our school nurse team, we're looking at really saying this, and this is kind of the way we think it should be. You're sick, stay home. You have COVID, stay home. As far as you were near someone and all that, you can't manage that anymore. That needs to stop. We need to move forward and address kids that are sick and help those students and those families. And that's the recommendation of our medical professionals in the district, is we have to move forward, stop excluding kids every 5 minutes, and let these kids stay in school if they're not sick. So that's what we're going to be asking the board to consider in a change in policy. And, because again, the policy right now calls for all these exclusions, so we have to actually adjust the policy. So I'm putting it out there now, and then we can discuss it policy in more detail. Also reducing those things for COVID back to the 5 days, which is the recommended number. And then as far as contact tracing, if you're not excluding, you kind of lose that. We've already reduced the contact tracing significantly, so we want to make that more policy driven. So those are coming down the line, Mr. Mitchell. Hopefully we can get a meeting on the schedule sooner than later. Now that we have the information, there's a meeting tomorrow. The Commissioner of Education is being joined by the Commissioner of Health. It'll be very nice to see that the Commissioner of Education, haven't seen the Commissioner of Education in a year and a half, so that is new. And hopefully they'll be presenting information that is useful to us. So we have a bunch of us attending from the school district, and we got in, we're lucky. They only limited the number of people to 1,000 people in the whole state. Yeah, so we got 6 of those seats because we got the black market version of the link.
In person, Mr. Patel?
In person? No.
Virtual.
No, this is virtual. Yeah, I'm good if it was in person, but it's not. It's that. Just also the concept of doing things in person. This program where we had the kids up here, it's time to move them back. We need to get back in person. So we're moving as many things as we can back in person as well. That's not policy, but I'm just sharing that as well. COVID protocols, we're trying to move that forward. And more things which I'll get into with the policy committee on what kind of tests we accept and all that kind of stuff, and if there's COVID in the house and all these other things. Basically, we want to move us forward, want to keep everybody safe, no question of that, but we do want to stop sending kids home right and left. So more with policy, but I want to share that those COVID protocols are something I've been working on with the nurses, Jamie Bomer, Jim Conroy, Amy Finkelstein, and Rafael Morales. So it's good stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Patel.
Any discussion, feel free, but that's all I want to share.
Any questions to the right? Any questions to the left? Dr. Raj.
Do we need a motion to close the item of mask?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay. So moving on now to new business. We don't have any new business at this time. So we will proceed to the action items. And I would like a motion to approve the consent agenda of... Yes.
Get her to do the motion.
Once.
Joe, you got to let her make the motion first, then for discussion.
Oh, sorry.
Yep. Go.
Okay. So I would like a motion to approve the consent agenda of February 24th to 2022. Thank you, Mr. Nathanson, for jumping in so quickly. And seconded by Mr. Scaletti. No. Thank you very much for that. Any discussions?
Madam President.
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to amend the agenda and add a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation to adopt option 1 as presented here tonight at the start time presentation. I'm sorry.
Second. Anybody seconding that? Dr. Raj? Okay. So, Mr. Plowski?
I'd like to make a comment.
Do we?
Discussion.
No, wait,
Discussion.
Do we, because I was already going on to the consent agenda for that motion. To have another motion.
We're adding a motion to the consent agenda.
Okay, any discussion before we move ahead? Yes, Mrs. Karthik.
Yeah. Thank you. I wanted to first thank the Late Start Committee for all the work that they've done. I'm a late entrant in this discussion because by the time I got elected, this work was already in flight. So thank you so much to the entire committee that worked so dedicatedly for all of the hours that they've put in. While I am a strong supporter of healthy sleep patterns, and I think it contributes to mental health, having suffered sleep deprivation myself, I do understand some of the horrific side effects of it. So I would have loved to see a late start for our high schools. I do understand that there have been extreme circumstances that have guided this discussion. And I'm very heartened by the comment that our superintendent has made to keep this line of discussion open and to sort of explore options in the future as well. predicated on circumstances improving in our school district. So that being said, I wanted to thank everyone who's contributed their valuable time here to this discussion, and I hope that we can continue to work together in the future to keep this dialogue open.
Thank you, Mrs. Karthik. Anybody else? Mr. Nathanson.
Yeah, I just want to, Priya left. I wanted to thank her because she brought up a interesting point. It's not them against us. It's the community looking at a problem of transportation and trying to also remedy another situation. So it is definitely more than the answer, because we're looking to improve the first choice or the recommendation from the superintendent is way more than just sports. There's other things that happen why the committee looked at it. And, I'm not going to go over the presentation again, but the presentation pointed out all the factors that affect everything that's going on, and especially the factor of our elementary children and their parents. And that's what drove the committee and drives the board. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Nathanson. Anybody else? Okay, so
One second,
moving,
please.
yeah.
David, you have to get an agreement to put it on the agenda.
I know. I'm calling for, so there's a motion on the table. We have a first and a second to add option 1, a motion to accept option 1 from the transportation report from the superintendent of schools to the consent agenda. We've had discussion. Is there any other discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Pulaski, I'd like to abstain, please.
You're gonna, okay. So all in favor?
Yes.
2 abstentions and 2 abstentions. The motion does carry. We're going to add that motion to the agenda. At this time, I have the consent agenda is been, Mr. Nathanson did a motion to move the consent agenda. I need a second. I have Mrs.
I'll second.
Mehta said Scaletti, but I don't believe
No.
Mr. Scaletti was
No, he wasn't.
seconding. So who's going to second? So we got
Mrs.
Rogers on the second. And we've had our discussion.
Yes.
No, actually, you're going to call for discussion on the consent agenda. 'Cause
Thank you,
didn't do
Mr.
that just
Pulaski.
yet.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Any discussion on the consent agenda of, let me just be clear on this, it's February 24th, 2022. Anybody? Seeing none? So
I have a question. So when we added this motion to the consent agenda for the late start and option 1, are we voting on it by roll call now?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
You're voting on the entire consent agenda, which is inclusive of this motion that we just added.
Okay. And it will be by roll call, right?
Yes, it will.
Okay.
May I ask, the abstention is for what reason?
You can't do that. No,
Can't do
we're not
that?
doing that. Nope.
Thank you.
Okay, you're ready to roll.
Okay, so we've had the discussion. Right, all in favor?
No, roll
this is a
call.
roll call vote.
Roll call, Mr. Pulaski, please.
Okay. Mrs. Deepa Karthik,
Before I vote, I have a quick comment. Mr.
we had
Pulaski,
time for comment. So your time for public comment was during the discussion. So at this point in time, we're voting. So this is a roll call vote.
All right.
Okay. So how would you like to vote?
Yes.
Okay, understood. Mr. Rajakrishna?
Yes.
Mr. Raymond Keener?
Yes.
Mrs. Joyce Mehta?
Yes, apart from the option 1.
Yeah, what are you doing on option 1?
She's
I'm
abstaining. Mr. Mitchell?
Yes, and abstaining on option 1, please.
Dr. Smith-Raj? Mrs. Lisa Rogers?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph Scaletti?
Yes.
Mr. Barry Nathanson?
Yes.
Motion's carried. The consent agenda carries. It's in its entirety.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pawlowski, for that. So moving on to the next part of the agenda, which is the board committee and liaison reports. I know that there will be several this evening. So to my right, board committee, yes, Mrs. Rogers.
The curriculum committee met yesterday, so we'll have minutes issued this week along with, at the next board meeting, there will be a report. Also, I had gone to the zoning board, or I shouldn't say gone, it was on Zoom, the zoning board of adjustment meeting on February 17th. I do want to make a note to Mr. Fetter that there is a application on record for 7 lots off Old Beekman Road, numbers 175 to 179. There's scheduled to be 6 homes built. I know it's not a lot. However, my concern is, I just want to make a note to you that there's an odd even numbers there, and some might go to Brunswick Acres, and some might go to Greenbrook, and some might go to Crossroads South, and some might go to Crossroads North. So I just want to make a note to the board that to take a look at that to see if that's going to be an issue for the kids, since they'll be living next to each other, going to different schools. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Board committee liaison reports. Mr. Nathanson.
Yes. Last night we had a budget finance committee meeting. I as chair was there. Ray Keener, Deepa Karthnik, Joyce was there. David, Jen. David, you missed Mr. Fetter on the name of attendees, by the way. So we had our initial budget meeting. I have to commend Mr. Pawlowski and Mr. Fetter for an impressive initial meeting. We discussed the current environment regarding tax levies, health care increases, ratables in the township, and their impact in the district's financial health and stability. Provided the group insight on school district financial structures and funding formulas in the state of New Jersey, reviewed S2 schedule of cuts and the potential impact these would have on our district if they were to come to fruition. Also discussed Chapter 44 and the state looking to reduce districts' ability to raise taxes due to savings in health care. And we reviewed the budget calendar and timelines which regarding to the governor's address and the final adoption of the budget. And to the board, what the situation is that this board has to approve a budget a few weeks before we know what the outcome is of our funding. So unfortunately, it's game as usual, and I thank the budget committee for participating last night, and again, thank Mr. Pawlowski, Mrs. Desler, and Mr. Fetter.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Nathanson.
Yeah, something?
Mr. Fetter.
Yeah, so at last night's budget meeting, I just want to point this out. This will be the second time I think I've pointed this issue out. Deepa is brand new to the board. So sorry, Deepa, you're going to have to hear this again. Deepa's brand new to the board, and this was her first budget meeting. And what I noticed in the meeting was there's language in a budget that isn't normal language, that people don't just wake up in the morning and know this language. And Deepa, just going to praise you for this concept of you refuse to not understand. But think of that concept. Rather than sitting there and just saying, I guess whatever they say is good, or not, she insisted from us to understand, because she knows she has an obligation to this community to vote and express her opinion, right or wrong, and to do that, you need to understand. And that was modeled beautifully last night. And while there was no vote on the budget tonight, what you've done is you've said, I'm not going to sit there. I was elected to this board to have an opinion, to have a thought. And if I don't understand it, I'm going to ask the questions and I'm going to vote. And if you don't agree, you vote no. That's what you do. And I think that's what you will do if you don't agree.
Absolutely.
And that is what a board member does. So I want to praise you for that.
Thank you.
It was, you put us in the ringer, I'll tell you that, you do. But that's exactly what should happen. And I want to praise you for that. And I'm going to say Raja last night on the other committee did the same thing to us. But you know, it's not just sitting there and just not counting things. And I just want to say that's great stuff. So thank you. And I'll be ready next time for you, Deepa.
Thank you, Mr. Vedder.
I'll be ready for Deepa next time.
Any other board committee liaison reports? Seeing none, we're moving onward to our second opportunity for public comment, and that will be for any topic at all. Mr. Pawlowski, do we have any registered members here?
No, we don't. Not at this time.
Anybody who would like to speak, make any comments? Seeing none? Okay, yes, I was looking at both of you, but that's okay. Seeing none, we'll move on. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Township of South Brunswick hereby moves into executive session in accordance with the Sunshine Law, Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, to discuss the following: personnel matters and negotiations. Be it further resolved that the discussion conducted in executive session can be disclosed to the public at such time as the matters have been resolved. Formal action may be taken at any meeting. Please, can I get a motion to move into executive session? Dr. Raj, seconded by Mr. Nathanson. Thank you. Any discussions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you so much. We move into executive. Good night, South Brunswick.